Hi everyone, welcome back to Soft Edges Podcast. I am Rocca and with the sexiest co-host of the entire universe, Lucy Gerard, we are very happy to have you with us on our 9th episode. We will continue our discussion on pleasure activism, the politics of feeling good by Adrienne Maree Brown, specifically the section between the pages 307 and 344. Which means we will get to talk about Beyonce in this episode. I'm so ready for this.
Me too.
So ready. Everything I own is in a box to the left and waiting for us to unpack. Lucy, how are you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I'm pretty tired as per usual.
Aren't we all?
Yes, I know. I think we're all in the same case of exhaustion from life in general, work, this whole pandemic that's lasting way too fucking long.
Oh yeah. Well, exhaustion never really required justification, but it just couldn't be more justified than it is now.
Exactly. I just hope that by the time this episode comes out, we're all in a better, lighter situation worldwide. I hope so.
Oh, I hope so too.
How are you doing, my dear?
Same, a little tired, but the fact that we're going to talk about such interesting stuff is giving me some energy.
Me too. I'm very happy to be here.
Same. And this reading section was also so beautiful.
Yeah.
It was so philosophical, so quirky and entertaining, while it was still filled with incredible information as well.
Completely agree.
So, yeah.
Exciting.
Shall we begin then?
Let's dive right in.
All right, let's do it. Well, we are embarking on a subsection now called The Politics of Wholeness in Movements, and the carefully chosen quote at the beginning comes from Audre Lorde's A Burst of Light. Quote, "Tomorrow belongs to those of us who conceive of it as belonging to everyone, who lend the best of ourselves to it, and with joy." End quote.
Beautiful.
We are recording in end of February now. Recently it was her birthday, and also with my book club, because we've read Istanbul, we read The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, and all the essays in that collection. Oh, Audre Lorde, incredible, legendary human being. We owe so much to her.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought a book of hers actually recently, and I'm super excited to start it.
Which one did you buy?
Wait, let me see, because it's right here. It's from my recent splurge. I spent like 90 euros on books. But yeah, it's The Black Unicorn.
Okay.
And I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting for a nice little reading time to start it, but it looks already super interesting from what I can tell, and I think it's mostly poems, so I'm excited.
Her poems are incredible. Actually, I could even recommend you that you first read the essay called "Poetry is Not a Luxury" from Audre Lorde as well. Could be a nice intro to that poetry book, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll definitely keep it in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. To really read and understand where Audre Lorde puts poetry, how she defines it, and in contrast to what.
Yeah. Super nice.
Could add something, maybe.
Yeah, I'll try that.
It's a great essay anyway. Well, the first chapter of this subsection is called The Pleasure of Living at the Same Time as Beyonce, Giselle, Knowles, Carter. So, Lucy, before we even begin discussing the text, I wanted to ask you, do you remember your first encounter with Beyonce? How was it? Do you remember your first impression of her?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. My first encounter with Beyonce. Well, I think if I remember correctly, it was when I was much, much younger, when I was like literally a child and I was watching a lot of MTV. Was it MTV Clips, or I don't remember what it was called. This whole music video session on MTV, and I think the very first time I saw Beyonce was actually in the music video of Survivor, Destiny's Child.
Yeah.
And so I was introduced to her as the member of Destiny's Child. And I thought she was just so beautiful, that these three beautiful women were so fierce, and I was just fascinated from the very first sight, because it was like, wow, who are these beautiful women, and this incredible song that kind of like gets stuck in your head immediately.
Yes.
And yeah, and the video clip is so nice too. I rewatched it recently, and with my children's eyes, I think I didn't realize how like I don't want to say crappy, but it kind of looks crappy. But at the same time, it was the style of that time, right?
Yes,
With like those matching
absolutely. Oh
outfits,
yeah.
like the green screen.
Oh my God. That's
I love it. I
hilarious.
love it. Yeah. What was your first encounter with
The
Beyonce?
first time she came into my life was in the summer of 2003 with her single Crazy in Love.
Mm.
And I was 11, and I remember thinking, what a gorgeous and cool woman she was. She was so sexy to me. She was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And her now famous walk in the beginning of the video clip of
Fuck
Crazy
yeah.
in Love got me so excited already back then. I just couldn't have enough of her. She was incredible, you
She
know.
looks so fucking
And
fierce in that music video.
oh
Oof.
yeah,
Yes.
she was hot.
Mm-hmm.
And each single that she released from that album just got better and better for me also. Like I was really following her. I was really enthusiastic about her. And those were the days of MTV. And we're that generation, the golden days of MTV.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, she was the one pop star who had all my attention, honestly. I remember being in love with the cover of Dangerously in Love, the styling that she's wearing there and her pose. And, you know, I loved Baby Boy, I loved Me, Myself, and I
Yes.
loved Naughty Girl. I mean, her solo acts really began with such high quality material,
I
I think.
agree.
She was really giving us everything.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she's always been also very smart in the way that she released music. And she was always kind of avant garde almost in her style.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she really kept it up. She also gave us amazing stuff with the last album of Destiny's Child also with of course Kelly and Michelle as well. Lose My Breath, Soldier, Girl, these songs,
Yes.
I mean seriously.
Fucking
Wow,
yes.
everything. It was full of so much material, so much feeling, so many emotions in all the different songs, and her work was a huge mark on the earliest erotic material in my life.
Oh, wonderful.
She gave so much. She keeps giving. I absolutely love Beyonce.
Same. What a legend.
Well, do you have like a specific reason, or two or three, why you love Beyonce? What comes up to mind first?
So first, I would say that her artistry is just absolutely legendary. I think she has always been very thoughtful and very mindful in her work, in the music that she released, in the way that she presented herself to the world, because she's also a very private person when it comes to her personal
Yeah.
life, but at the same time she gives so much of herself in her songs and her music, and all of her albums are so different from one another. So I appreciate the versatility that she shows and the evolution and constant change that she goes through musically. So that for sure. And of course, I just find her to be one of the most beautiful women on earth.
Yes, absolutely.
Her sense of style and fashion are so unique and so clean,
Yeah.
and yet so fashion forward at the same time.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's what I think about her.
Love her. But it's so true. She's quite a private person, but just like Adrienne Murray Brown also says, she's really weaving her partner and her children into her artistry and giving us that intimacy through her work.
Yeah.
Not through tabloids or scandals. And even when they had this elevator scandal with Jay-Z and with Beyonce's sister Solange, we still don't know what happened there.
Yeah. And I
know?
think it's
They
good.
didn't capitalize on that. They
No.
didn't turn it into a scandal themselves. And the only way she commented on that situation was also when she weaved it into one of her works and said, of course, sometimes shit goes down when there's $1 billion on the elevator, she says.
Yeah.
You know? While
was
rapping
such
in
a
the song.
Yeah, I think it was such a a smart way to address it very quickly.
Yes.
And into her music without making any statement, any comments, never siding with whoever, just very neutral and at the same time acknowledging that it happened and that the world knows about
Yes.
it and is curious.
Exactly. And it shows so much respect to her audience and her fans, because it says, okay, this is my intimate situation, so I will deal with it in the way that I want to, but this is what I can share with you in a written piece of art, in a music that I recorded, that I'm performing for you. This is how I will bring myself to you, my intimacy. This is how I will gift it to you. There's so much respect and care in that gesture as well.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I have so many reasons to love Beyonce. And one is the fact that there's a song titled Gift from Virgo on her first solo album. And I love imagining Beyonce being curious about astrology, about her sun sign, you know, about what it means for her, and reading about Virgo and relating herself to it, and then really just loving it and then embodying it, feeling connected to it, so much so that she decides to write a song about it and release it on her solo album even. I love that she's so
That's
open
really
to that
cool.
kind of thoughts and that kind of associations and that kind of mysteries about the universe and personalities and life.
I think she seems like quite a spiritual person,
I agree.
from my perspective.
Quite a philosophical and spiritual person.
Exactly.
I think. I love her. So with Adrienne Maree Brown also, there's a parallel for her between her love for Octavia Butler and her love for Beyonce. These are two black women who shaped the narratives that held them. And Beyonce is the queen Adrienne Maree Brown's anarchic heart continues to choose. Well, just like you mentioned how meticulous and wonderful Beyonce is in her work, Brown also really appreciates how hardworking and prolific Beyonce is, how willing to learn in public, and how she's able to politicize her material without rigidity. This last point was really interesting to me. This is really what Beyonce has been doing.
Yeah.
She's really politicizing her material without rigidity in such a beautiful way, such an impactful way.
I completely agree. I love that Adrienne Maree Brown highlighted this point because it's so true, and it's not necessarily a connection or something that is necessarily said about Beyonce and her work and the way that she does it in the mainstream media, but I think it was an excellent point. Yeah,
absolutely. This is something really interesting because it's actually something that I aspire to manage making my work digestible in the way that I want to have it. So Beyonce being able to speak to masses through her pop stardom and then still politicize her work in a way that fits to her work and her artistic persona and what she wants to do with her talent. It's so inspiring to me.
Exactly.
I love that.
She does it beautifully.
What comes to your mind when you hear Brown say Beyonce politicizes her material without rigidity? Do you have a specific example of how Beyonce does this?
Interesting.
Maybe a song, a video, or an interview.
Well, I mean, but that's the first thing that comes to mind is actually something that Adrienne Maree Brown talks about in this chapter later on. But because I just rewatched it this week, I think that's why it's popping in my mind. But of course, her performance at the Grammy Awards in 2017, I think, was extremely strong, and that's a really good example of the way Beyonce politicized without rigidity her work and her artistry and the messages that she wants to share. And actually, I think a lot of her performances do that. In many award shows, her performances are rarely just about, or quote unquote, just about the music or just about her performing as a super pop star. But it always has some kind of depths and many, many layers. So I think her performance art is what I would say.
Yes. Absolutely. She's a pop star performance artist, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah. I have one example that displays this politicizing without rigidity. For me, it's a very clear example of how politics in her work comes up. And it's in the intro to her song Haunted. It's titled Ghosts. It's like an intro to the song, and there she reads this poem, and part of the lyrics go as such, quote, "I'm climbing up the walls cause all the shit I hear is boring, all the shit I do is boring, all these record labels boring. I don't trust these record labels. I'm torn. All these people on the planet working 9 to 5 just stay alive, and 9 to 5 just stay alive, and 9 to 5 just stay alive, and 9 to 5 just stay alive. All the people on the planet working 9 to 5 just stay alive. How come? End quote.
Yep.
And excuse me? Beyonce coming through with a clear critique of capitalism? Of work, full-time work culture.
Yeah, fucking like, mic drop.
I loved it. The first time I heard her recite this, I had chills.
Beautiful.
Seriously. I was so happy hearing Beyonce say, all these people on the planet working 9 to 5 just to stay alive. How come?
Yeah.
I love that so much.
She's a fucking smart woman, and also so fucking...
She's such a legend.
I don't know, it's, to me, that kind of message, it's not something that you see happen so commonly in the mainstream music industry. And the fact that she did that without even thinking twice, and just with the intention of pointing out capitalism in such a direct way, I just find that so beautiful and powerful and empowering. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know how this poem ends? She says, I probably won't make any money of this. Oh well. You reap what you sow. Perfection is so... She says. She is so amazing. I am in love.
Yes.
I love
She's
her.
So cool.
Like her recognizing that she probably won't make any money of this piece, this little song, this single, because she's talking about these things. It's brilliant, and how she seized all control over her image and her own music as well. As far as I know, she's now working directly under her own license.
Ooh, also, amazing!
You know, I especially really liked how Brown pointed out Beyonce's growth from "Cater to You" to "Don't Hurt Yourself." From speechless to listen to sorry to freedom to boss. And I think even witnessing this growth is such a blessing.
Oh yeah, for sure. It really is. It's incredible to witness that. When you look at it like from start to finish, it's like, wow, she really did that.
Absolutely. And this is how she's shaping the culture and shaping herself with the culture, but also shaping the culture, exposing us to her own growth so publicly as well. And I love Brown's fascination of how culture shapes politics and our daily lives. How pop culture can shape that. And her appreciation for Beyonce for taking the responsibility of this culture shaping. Beyonce really feels like she's doing that very consciously. You know? Yeah, I mean, even this argument is enough to underline why a phenomenon like Beyonce is incredibly relevant to a discussion of mass cultural movements.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And I'm saying this in relation to this quote from Brown, quote, I love loving a black woman pop star this unapologetically, in public, and still demand that anyone I meet takes me seriously in the work. Claiming Beyonce opened up a path towards my wholeness.
Yes.
End quote. Yeah. You know, sometimes there's this feeling that loving someone so mainstream like a pop star or a best-selling story or a TV show or whatever is in some way something to be ashamed of, or the only way you can talk about them is by calling them a guilty pleasure, followed by like a nervous laughter.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm so done with that shit.
Me too. I'm over it. Let's not feel shame around whoever the fuck inspires us, even if they're part of the mainstream industry. Like, who cares? Who cares? Beyonce is a fucking badass. She's inspiring. She's empowering people all around the world, and she should be celebrated. She really should be. She achieved so much as a beautiful black woman in the United States, and her success is just incredible, period.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so true. Yeah, I'm so done with that, and I've been done with that for a very long time also. You know, so much of my first YouTube series was a commentary on a mainstream Turkish soap opera, and I would analyze each episode from it. And I looked everywhere, but I really couldn't find a fuck to give about what friends or strangers would think about it. Like, I would be talking about something so mainstream, and I really embraced something that spoke to me with erotic joy, and I cherished it fully. And throughout that, I still demanded to be taken seriously as well. You know what I mean?
As you fucking should.
Yes. I went full on with it, honestly. I would make like music videos. You know all about that. Like, I was just really into it.
And I think it's really cool. Like I don't know why anyone should feel ashamed of doing something
Yes.
like that. Because why exactly is it shameful to put so much energy, so much love, so much passion and work into something that's mainstream? I don't really see the relation between shame and that.
Me neither. Or shame and
Not
passion.
everything needs to be indie, oh my god, super underground.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make you cooler than other people if all you listen to is underground shit. Like, okay, good for you, girl. But also get over yourself. Like, okay.
I feel like the other side of this coin is this brilliant Instagram account called Beam Me Up Soft Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And exposing these screenshots of these like soft boys. I don't know how they define it. I'm not sure. That's why I won't try to define it. But like these people who are all about an indie culture, and they judge people based on that. And it's often like these dating app conversations that they're like, oh, you probably don't know this band, but they're just fire. I really recommend you. You know what I mean? Like, you have to check that account. It's hilarious. It's so funny.
Oh my god, that sounds so fucking funny. But I see exactly those people.
Yeah.
I know these people. It's like, yeah, I mean, I went to this concert last summer in like a garage somewhere at my grandparents' house, and I discovered this band. You probably don't know them, but they're so fucking cool.
Oh
And it's
my
like,
God.
okay, well, good for you, but what about Beyonce?
Stop.
Are they performing at the Grammy Awards? I didn't think
I
so.
don't think so. Yeah.
Not that liking indie stuff is bad, by the way.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not what I'm
exactly.
saying
Same.
at all. We all listen to lots of different things, but I'm just saying, let's stop shaming each other for loving mainstream shit.
100%.
All right.
Yeah, Brown also shows us this perfect way of just embracing this with pride and joy when she says that she hosted a conference call to discuss Beyonce's self-titled
Yes.
album when it was dropped. And, back then, I only had my ex with me when that album came out, and we both loved it. But I didn't have a bigger community to discuss the work with. And I wish I had that, because it could have been great, It could have been wonderful. And when Beyonce's incredible film Black is King came out, it was again me forcing it down the throats of all my friends and loved ones. I was like, please watch this, we need to talk about this. Next time I'm also hosting a conference call or joining Browns, or if it's public, or whatever, I have to talk about it with the community.
This is an open call.
Yes.
This is a very subtle message that Mayas is just throwing out there.
Very not so
Adrienne
subtle.
Maree Brown is listening to this.
Oh, yeah.
Just hit him up. He really wants to get on your conference calls about Beyonce.
Yes,
So.
please, Adrienne Maree Brown, please just DM me the Zoom link. I'll be there. Let's talk about Beyonce. Seriously. Like,
Yes.
I must say, this chapter wasn't enough for me. It felt like very condensed and like a summarized version of an entire ocean of analysis and thought Brown actually produced over the work of Beyonce, but perhaps never shared it,
Yeah.
I would have loved to hear or read a much more detailed analysis from Adrienne Maree Brown on the work of Queen Bee.
Oh, me too. I would love to hear that.
Would she ever bless us with something like that?
I hope so. Wink, wink.
Maybe a Beyonce-based book of lessons of emergent strategy, black feminism and transformative justice. I'll keep fantasizing. It's all in there. It's all in there. Looking at us to bring it to the reality. I mean,
Yes, ideas.
yes. Yeah. But you mentioned this Grammy performance from 2017. When Brown talks about it, she says this, which I loved, quote, "Her face, that of a woman who has learned the sacred witchcraft of healing, who has grown a universe in the landscape of her broken heart." End quote. And then I checked the performance and I saw that face and I knew exactly what Brown was talking about.
Isn't it one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen? And I mean,
So
the whole
beautiful.
performance, I would recommend anybody to watch it, honestly. It's only 10 minutes long. It's on YouTube. You can find it super
Yes.
easily. And from beginning to end, the beauty and the just the depth and the thoughtfulness that goes into it, and the choreography, the movements, the lightness and the heaviness at the same time, the darkness and the
Yeah.
light, it plays so beautifully
Ooh.
with, I mean, projections, with dance, with Beyonce just being the most beautiful and brilliant presence on stage. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful and so much meaning behind it as well. I loved that. I loved it.
Oof. Legendary moment in
Mm-hmm.
the history of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Beyonce performing that.
And how
Really?
fucking, I mean, how fucking badass that she did that at the Grammy Awards.
Oh yeah.
Nobody ever does shit like that at the Grammy Awards.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah.
I think humanity might have evolved just so that Beyonce could appear one day and do these things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then we're done. I'm up for it. Let's disappear. All we do is harm this planet. Let's go. Beyonce's
Bye-bye.
here. She's doing her thing. When she's gone, let's just stop this. We
Yeah.
don't have to do anything.
I agree. I don't want to live in a world without Beyonce.
Oh yeah. All the good that can be done will be have done by her already. So. And Beyonce's Lemonade was such a masterpiece, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it came into my life in such a crucial moment. I could relate to
Really?
a lot of heartbreak and grief she expressed with it. It was so empowering and so healing for me. Especially, you know, Brown says, walking away until you can be seen in your wholeness. And that quote from Brown and the album Lemonade, they really sum up a period of my life when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was so wonderful. How was your experience with it?
With her album Lemonade, I mean, for me, it
Yes.
was. I thought it was first of all really fucking genius the way that that she released basically an entire film with her album, and it
Yeah.
was such a, yeah, it was just beautiful to me because it wasn't something that I had seen before from, particularly, as we've mentioned before, mainstream artists. So I thought that was really, really well made, and everything that she talks about, the stories that she tells with her voice, the emotions that she shares with us, I thought were just really, really touching. And it's so difficult to make something so vulnerable and making it such a grand piece is such an achievement in itself, because there's, as you said, like so much grief and heartbreak that she relays to us and that she shares with such candor. And I appreciate the way that she combined those emotions in her voice with such spot-on visuals as well. It was very,
yeah.
very unique. I hadn't seen something like that in a very long time, or if I had, it was more in the art world, kind of, but not in a pop star, in a pop star's work. So I just thought she did something completely, completely unique, and I really appreciated that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the way she embodies all of these that you just mentioned, it feels like every new work that she puts out, she gains more and more agency, more and more control, and more awareness of what she wants her artistry to look like, to sound like, to tell. She is viewing visual stories for us. She could have just decided to release an album and 3 music videos and be done with it and
Exactly.
still pack her millions and then just leave. But she really wants to embody the situation, the story. She wants to be there. She's there with her body, singing it to us in that story in carefully constructed visuals and brilliant work. She wants
Yeah.
to be there as she is and look at us in the eye and embody the heartbreak, the joy, the pleasure, the sexiness, and the anger,
rebirth.
by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry, what did you
anger
say?
as well. The
Yeah.
rebirth.
The rebirth, absolutely. And yeah, anger as well. The lineage of Audre Lorde appears on Beyonce in the way she expresses anger also. Audre Lorde's The Uses of Anger is just appearing in a lot of Beyonce's work, in her music, in her videos. I'm so passionate about it. I could talk about this for hours.
I mean, I completely understand because as we just said, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but she's just a fucking genius and she is such a complete
Yeah.
artist, truly. She embodies something that's very unique and that I think she inspired so many artists after her, and still to this day a lot of people are still not copying but trying to um
Yeah.
to redo what she achieved in their own way, of course. But I truly believe she
Yes.
started a whole movement of artistry and of artists really experimenting and exploring different ways of telling their stories in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
not just through a music album, but through
Yes.
so many different
Absolutely.
mediums as well.
So thankful for her. So
Hmm.
thankful. And her songs like Blow or Rocket. Beyonce's songs are my sexy songs, these songs. She really gives me what I need to feel with my Virgo ascendant, the kind of
Yeah.
sexy that I feel close to. When I listen to Rocket, when it starts
Hmm.
with like, let me sit this ass on you,
Hmm.
I'm like, yes, this is what I'm feeling. Or the entire Blow is just, oof, yeah, speaks to my soul.
She's a very sexy woman, and I
Yes.
I love the way that she embodies her sexy and the way that she is not ashamed of it and she just keeps on giving it to us, and I am
Yes,
thirsty for it.
forever. Well, then, shall we move on to the next chapter?
Absolutely.
It is titled On Fear, Shame, Death, and Humor, a conversation between the Rocca family and Zizi. So, Rocca family is difficult to define, and to me it seems it's quite intentional. Their definition is vague, and it's left a bit vague by Adrienne Marie Brown herself as well, which I enjoyed.
Hmm.
And to me, it feels like the Rocca family is just living as closely to the way they desire to live as possible, and making connections with humans or other species, or philosophy and wondering about life, immigration, reality, fiction, folklore, and magic under the guidance of their feline friend, a major part of their lives.
Hmm.
This life is also their collaborative art practice shared by Ola El Khaldi, Diala Kasani, and Rocca the cat. And their playground is called the Zizi Show, a platform of collaborative and interactive, performative and spontaneous work or workshops, music events, dance parties, video declarations, and more. Zizi might be one of the family's alter egos, I think, and Zizi is a philosopher with a lot of mood swings who avoids concrete definitions of things,
Hmm.
who makes up truths and brings forward lies.
Hmm.
So this chapter is a conversation between the Rocca family and Zizi, their alter ego. What was your overall take from this one?
Yeah, I both loved and, to be completely honest, feared Zizi as a character, as an alter ego, as an extreme person, right? Because
Oh
she's
yeah,
pretty
right.
extreme. And I would say that the love laid in like the positions that Zizi took when it came to the human issues, such as fear and shame, superficiality, love,
Hmm.
entitlement. And I guess the fear came from discomfort. First, because I have this strange ickiness around people who speak about themselves in the third person, but that's a very personal
Oh my
thing.
god, really?
and and secondly, because Zizi spoke with such grand confidence, I would say,
Uh-huh.
that it at times would almost make me feel small, which is
Ah.
interesting. In French, we have this expression where we would say "elle ne mâche pas ses mots," which literally translates to "she doesn't chew her words." And I just love this expression because it just means that she's whole, she's brutally honest, she's not afraid to speak up, to speak her truth. But it can also mean that someone is also being harsh,
Yeah.
which I think can apply here at certain moments too. But I did find their conversation really interesting, deeply interesting even, and it reminded me of actually those books that we used to study in philosophy class with transcripts of conversations between super big philosophers like Plato or Socrates and their disciples, you know?
Yeah.
um, and yeah, in this conversation between the Rocca family and Zizi, I feel like they tackled a lot of the issues that I personally had or still have questions around. So that was great to read through. But what did you think about this conversation actually?
Beautiful. Similar to you, honestly. I really appreciated these takes on certain topics related to human condition. But also, at times, I felt like, no, Zizi, stop judging me. You know, don't be so harsh. At times, I felt like, okay, Zizi, you know, like, let's get you to bed. I felt a bit like that.
All right, girl, let's just,
Yeah.
all right. That's one too many martinis, honey.
I know. But certain things I really, of course, really did appreciate. For example, they first ask Zizi about fear, the forms of fear that they experience, and they wonder if it's possible to be fear-free.
Yeah,
and
I loved that.
Yeah, Zizi's take on that was beautiful.
I thought so too.
It was a fresh take for me also, because Zizi was also giving us a tool to like utilize that fear. And it was a fresh suggestion saying like utilize what the fear makes our bodies produce as a stimulant for deeper and more radical living. That we should never be fear-free and rather befriended. And yeah, apparently fear is important to Zizi and it helps us keep ourselves alive. And Zizi gives a tool to manage it, saying, quote, when faced with fear, imagine the worst case scenario and experience it in your head. Bring the fear into proportion, end quote. So I think that was quite a valuable advice.
I guess so. I don't know.
You have doubts about it?
That to me is just anxiety.
Okay.
This is what I do on a constant level. This is how my anxiety translates itself. So I didn't fully agree with, just because if I do it, it's just harmful to me. And that's something that I'm trying to not do anymore. But I completely get what she was trying to say and why she would give that advice, because indeed I think for certain people, imagining the worst case scenario and living it in your head can be quite reassuring, because you can be like, okay, this could never actually fucking happen, so it's not real. There's no use in feeling fear at this moment. But yeah, it doesn't work like that in my head.
I totally understand what you mean. I think this can't be applied to everything. Indeed, there are certain fears that imagining the worst case scenario of that would totally destroy me as well if I would practice it on a daily. But if I can apply it to, for example, social conflicts between people, power dynamics, and that kind of stuff, then feeling like, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst this person can do to me? Can be so liberating also, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. I agree with that.
It can have its areas that it can be applied, I feel, right?
No, for sure. I think it's definitely something that you can do if you don't have like an obnoxious amount of anxiety already living in your mind.
Absolutely.
But I did completely love this part of the chapter and Zizi's perspective on fear, and the fact that we shouldn't fear fear, but rather befriend it, is such a good point. Because indeed, it makes sense to make it as a fuel, right? For a while when I was younger, I was very afraid of fear itself, and I tried to avoid it at all costs in my life. All situations that could potentially trigger fear, I would try to avoid. And then later on, in my teenage years, I moved on to numbing the fear for very, very many years, with substances mostly. But nowadays, I'm learning to love fear even when it isn't directly caused, or no, not even, but particularly when it isn't directly caused by something potentially dangerous and harmful, whether physically or emotionally harmful. The fear of the unknown for me is a great form of fear. It excites me more than it paralyzes me nowadays, which is great. However, I experience many forms of fear that still make me freeze at times, although I manage to push through and usually feel very proud and fulfilled when I do so. The fear of failure is a really big one, which I'm working on at the moment. I'm trying to recalibrate my brain to not see failure as something to be afraid of, but rather a sometimes necessary stop, quote unquote, stop on the path to growth, let's say. And the fear of disappointing others and the fear of abandonment are also two forms of fear I'm working on with the help of my trusty therapist. But yeah, there's many forms of fear which I'm sure many of us experienced or still do experience to this day, even if we are aware of how useful fear can be for us as a fuel. It's much more difficult to practice this befriending Zizi talks about in a constant manner. But yeah, I actually am curious. I wanted to ask you if you yourself have fears which you can use as fuel, and others that you know are still difficult for you to work through.
Yeah, I first want to thank you for sharing with us the growth you came in, specifically in how you dealt with fear before and how you do now. Amazing how, like, once you were this person who for many totally valid reasons avoided fear at all costs, and look at you now naming very specific huge fears that exist in your life, which means you were very aware of them, you look them in the eye or try to at least, and try to work through all of them. This growth is really gives me a lot of hope for certain fears that I harbor in myself as well.
That's really good to hear.
Really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You know, even though in my personal experience, I don't really know if I encountered an incident where I felt like fear was very useful at that moment. I don't really remember one where I thought, fear really helped with this, you know? But on the contrary, I have witnessed so many times how liberation came after the defeat of the fear. So maybe in that sense, to make liberation possible, maybe there must be a period of experiencing fear and then dealing with it so that we can get out of it finally. But I also saw many incidents where fear made certain things much more difficult, and sometimes unnecessarily difficult or complicated for myself and for other people around me as well, which I could only understand in retrospect.
Of course,
mostly, of course, because at that moment you don't know if it's an unnecessary fear or not. Of course, when you're in it, it's very real. But none of this means that I live fear-free or that I think we should live fear-free. Yeah, fear seems to be very connected to survival in nature as well, by the way. So I'm not sure total dismissal of it would be a good idea. No. But I must say I do aspire to have less and less of it. Yeah, I want to befriend it, but just so that I can have less and less of it. Just so that I can say, like, okay, buddy, here's the door. You need to get out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally see it. I think it's maybe for you it's more about not necessarily getting completely rid of it, but more handling it better, or seeing it and accepting it and walking with it next to you, but not completely inside of you, eating you up.
Exactly. Or like certain anxieties or fears that I might be experiencing but I am unable to put my finger on, I would like to see them and name them, just like you did so brilliantly just now. Like, there's so many times I feel something inside and I can't name it because it's so deep down. Maybe it's so old. Maybe it's practiced every day that I think it's my normal.
Yeah, that's true. That's
true.
true.
That's also something I want to work through related to fear.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I'm sure through therapy you can probably learn to do that and learn to acknowledge those fears and get to know them and actually pinpoint what they are related to.
Exactly. I really value the story side of it, you know, how I used to experience it like this and now I do see this and now I understand this. You know, I love this rational story we contain about our growth, and I think it's precious. And adding to that, I would totally be fine if I just, for example, keep going with EMDR therapy and not really rationally understand how some of those fears disappear and are gone and have no grip on me anymore. Like, I would be fine with that too. if I can't explain how my fear disappears, I'm also fine with that, as long as I
Oh,
feel
for
good,
sure.
as long as I get
Yeah,
happier, you
exactly.
know.
You don't always need to know how the magic trick works.
Exactly, you know. If there was a pill that would just, make me feel heal, integrate those traumatized parts of my brain to the current experience I have that is much safer, I would just do it. Why not?
Yeah,
But I value the story so much because our stories that we share with each other are so liberating and can help ourselves and others around us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very true.
So, Rocca family also asks Zizi about shame, and they do it without assuming that Zizi knows anything about it. They talk about the burden of holding the name of our families, of our histories, a certain existence we were born into. And Zizi says Zizi never feels shame and sees it as something starting with the body and for many staying there also. And Zizi relates so much of shame to natural parts and functions of our bodies, like body odor, farts, stigma on periods, etc. But also seems to have critique on why people get haircuts or get their eyebrows done or get a Brazilian wax or get bigger breasts or wear high heels, etc., calling it faking because of shame. How did you engage with that part, Lucy? I'm curious what you thought of that.
So I disagreed. I kindly, respectfully disagreed. I just found it to be very, very extreme.
Yes.
Because although I can understand why one might think that people get plastic surgery procedures or cosmetic surgery procedures or something as simple as putting makeup on or going to the gym and blah blah blah
Yeah.
as something superficial and deeply rooted in shame, that's not always the
Yeah.
case, and that's not necessarily the case actually, in my personal opinion. But I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think the line between calling these behaviors or insinuating them that they are pathological and seeing how this can be an expression of agency for some people
Mm-hmm.
should be a bit clearer, I think, in Zizi's expressions. I disagreed with it as well. I think a haircut or our agency over our body hair, like whatever we want to do with it. Yeah, maybe I want to get a fucking Brazilian. Yeah, or body modification or cosmetic surgery or whatever we want to do, whatever we want to wear, doesn't necessarily relate to shame in the way that it becomes the result of shame,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
even can be empowerment, actually, I feel.
Oh, definitely. And I think it
Yeah,
should be,
right?
right? I know there's still to this day a lot of stigma, particularly around plastic surgery, cosmetic surgeries, all of that stuff, because um, I don't know why exactly, actually. I was saying because blah, 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 but I don't know why. But I do think that
Yeah.
there's a lot of power and healing that can go through those procedures. Because it might be that someone simply has this insecurity, which isn't necessarily rooted in shame, but that has been, weighing heavy on their hearts, or it's just something that they wanted to improve, or
Mm-hmm.
something that they've always wanted to do since they were little, or,
Mm-hmm.
just seeing their body change. And that's
Exactly.
totally fine.
Exactly. Yeah. I also feel like I love how people define what beauty means for themselves. And that definition doesn't have to be unique. It can be the definition of fucking mass media, okay? And I want to embrace that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
want to be the cover
Mm-hmm.
girl in Vogue, okay? I want to look like her. Then what? Then what are you gonna do about it? Okay, there we of course have to try to understand where such desires come from and analyze it for ourselves. But this is a private matter, also political, of course, and has
Yeah.
a very important place in political discourse as well. But I really don't think it has a place on judging people for taking certain decisions about their own fucking bodies. You
Exactly.
know, what they want to do with that.
Yeah, I think it only becomes rooted in shame once there's judgment put onto those people. Just like Zizi is
Exactly.
doing, saying that these people are just faking it. constantly. But that's just putting shame on them. But the shame doesn't come from them. It comes from the outside world, hammering it into their persons. And that's just a pity. I don't know.
Absolutely. I thought exactly the same when Zizi also almost sounds like it's putting the blame on people who are doing strict diets instead of the systems that push people into that. Zizi also talks about like people who are doing strict diets and like, girl, don't you understand? Like, can you stop judging?
Yeah, this is very often strict diets in particular, I believe, are not the people's fault. It definitely is not. It's part of a whole system and a whole patriarchal
yes
empire that's just made us like that. It's not our fault.
I think strict dieting doesn't even have to be a pathological symptom. Someone can decide to do that for themselves.
No, of course.
Someone can say like, I want to look like a certain shape, so I want to try this. I want to limit how I eat in this way, or exercise that amount. Like, just leave people alone with what they want to do with their bodies. That's my point.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It doesn't matter, really. Whoever wants to eat a certain way or not, it's up to them.
Exactly.
It's not up to the rest of the world.
Or, when Zizi says, quote, waking up early to witness a sunrise that will never be again versus going to the gym, end quote. Which is like, bitch, that day at the gym will also never be again. That beautiful day at the gym will never be again.
Yeah, exactly.
That hot person you were eyeing this week will be there that morning.
Yeah,
And
who knows, that might be your future husband.
Absolutely. Please, let's leave people alone in their choices for themselves.
Yeah, especially when it comes to their bodies.
Exactly. But I also must say, I loved Zizi's mantra, I have a big belly and I love my belly.
Yes.
I loved that mantra.
Yeah, I loved it
love
too.
it.
And I found it actually quite, how do you say, it was almost a contradiction between what she was saying right before and that mantra. I found the tension to be really, really interesting because it went from almost shaming people to a mantra that's the complete opposite of shaming. It's about embracing your belly.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I found that interesting, the contradictions in this character.
Totally, good point, really. But yeah, I love bellies.
I love bellies too.
I find them beautiful and sexy. I always have. I love bellies.
Yeah, I love it. And recently I'm following a girl on Instagram who's named Rosie Reese, and she started this movement on her Instagram stories of taking pictures of her beautiful belly with her rolls and everything with the hashtag stop sucking it in. And there's tons of women and men around the world who just followed this hashtag and started posting pictures of themselves and their bellies, and I just find it so beautiful and so empowering and very supportive as well. Yeah,
I love that so much. Zizi also said, you hardly own yourself, let alone any others. No claim of anything. Not their bodies, not their hearts, not their times, not their freedom. End quote. And isn't that the truth?
Yep.
But then how come the entire system we as humans established completely contradicts this truth? Why? Why are we so inclined to live in total contradiction to truth?
That is a mystery.
Zizi, where's your answer to that? You were very vocal talking about people doing cosmetic surgery. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with kind of this weird dynamic of contradiction that humans have, because it's just something that's so relatable, and that's something that we all do. I feel it's a practice that's almost like a tradition at this point.
Yes, exactly. It feels like it's our wiring. It's how we are. Just
yeah, exactly. And I mean, Zizi shows that beautifully as well.
Yes. It feels like we find the truth to contradict it. We're like, I don't wanna.
Yep, sounds familiar.
Zizi also quotes Khalil Gibran, by the way. Quote, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." End quote. And Gibran wasn't referenced here, but I remembered this quote because once a wonderful teacher of mine quoted this exact same quote
Ooh.
to defend me from the expectations of my parents while advocating for me to make my own free choices about my life and my career and such.
Oh, wow.
So it really got stuck with me.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was really nice to remember that. And by the way, I had a long period of lusting for Khalil Gibran in my early teenage years. And I'm not sure about how some of his writings aged. I don't know if I agree with many of them, actually. But I still have a soft spot about this assertive and brooding, self-assured, philosophical persona that Gibran had. I don't know if you know anything about him, but there was a time that I really found him really fascinating, and I really loved his memories with Yusuf El-Huwayek from when they lived in Paris together when they were young.
So nice.
It was amazing.
It's good that it's so nice that you had this little glimpse of memory from just this quote.
I remembered that exact moment.
Yeah.
We were going to see an opera, and I was sitting with my mother, and my teacher was there, and then she sat with us in this beautiful hall, and we were talking about what I will do with the university and such. And Mom mentioned their own assertion about what I should do. And then my teacher quoted Gibran with this quote, like, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." And how Gibran said, like, "We are like an arrow that is shot from our parents."
Yeah.
So they can't have much control about us anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
once we're out there.
That's very true, isn't it?
Yes.
I completely
It was
agree.
A beautiful
Wholeheartedly.
Moment. It was a very empowering moment.
I can imagine.
It left this lasting feeling on me that when we witness, I'm not calling what my mom did there to me was an abuse, but when we witness a situation where a caretaker adult is doing or saying something that is contradictory to the autonomy of that child or that young person, how crucial and important it can be to stand there and say, like, "I disagree with your parent.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't be treated this way.
Yeah.
I think you should make your own decisions," even when your mother is there and
It's amazing.
getting pissed at it or whatever.
I love that your teacher stood up for you and actually stepped in and defended you.
I love her so much. Whenever I do something new, she always supports me. She shares whatever I share. When I share a Soft Edges episode, she shares it. Like, she is just
that's
so
amazing.
wonderful.
She sounds like such a wonderful person.
Oh, she's amazing. I love her.
And she sounds like she was a real landmark in your life.
She really was. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So cool. But actually, in relation to this section of the text, when Zizi talks about how we don't own anybody else, which is very true, and we shouldn't claim ownership over anybody, it's made me really think and reflect on ownership in the realm of romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Because it made me think about how marriage was indeed built on the concept of ownership, a man owning a woman and a woman being basically manipulated into thinking her worth only laid in her capacity to serve a man, her husband, her owner, period, her owner. Thankfully, the concept of marriage has evolved and continues to, hopefully.
Yes.
But its base is still pretty fucking gross. So yes, we shouldn't feel the need to claim ownership on anybody, and not only within the realm of romantic love, but at the same time, it made me reflect on where does the line, the nuance between ownership and commitment lay, if there is any. What's the difference between a commitment between two persons and an unspoken ownership? Is it consent? Can we talk about consent if, for example, in the context of a monogamous relationship, monogamy itself is a construct created and hammered onto us by oppressive forces such as patriarchy? there's a strange tension there for which I don't have a concrete answer to, but I thought it was an interesting stream of thoughts that this portion of the conversation triggered. And yeah, that's just where my thoughts went
Ooh,
after reading this portion of the text.
Very interesting. Absolutely. Where does that distinction lie between commitment and ownership, you said?
Yeah, exactly. Because I believe that for most of our time, we were taught that relationships were only valid if monogamous and heterosexual, right? And so that's a deeply anchored concept, especially when we nowadays see that relationships are evolving and there's more and more relationships that are completely based outside of monogamy itself. But then when you are in a monogamous relationship and you're still aware of those quote unquote new, although they're not new, forms of relationships, how do you reflect on the fact that you are choosing to be in a monogamous relationship, and where does the difference lay for you between owning that person and being committed to that person? Because if you're in a monogamous relationship, it means that both parties understand that they have kind of an ownership or commitment towards each other that says that they're only going to be committed to one another.
Yeah, very true. By definition, of course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the responsibility shifts to defining it actively in that case, with considering the needs of each other, maybe.
Yeah.
These questions you brought forward are things that I think about often as someone who has a partner for a long time now, who's in a lovely relationship, absolutely in love, but still the questions of monogamy and commitment, of course, as a general concept as well, is very often in my mind, and how I approach to it, how much I changed from years before to now in the way that I practice my monogamous relationships, you know?
Yeah.
You brought forward really interesting questions that after this episode I will keep thinking about, I think. Do you reflect on that often as well?
Yeah, I do, because I'm also in a monogamous relationship for the past few years, and it is something that is almost a bit strange to me, because before my current relationship, monogamy wasn't really my priority. Let's just put it that way. But at the same time, I do feel myself being more drawn to monogamy in my current relationship, but I don't know why and what has changed within me for me to think or to believe that I have more rights than anybody else to be with my partner, or for my partner to have more rights to be with me than anybody else. And where does this newfound feeling of insecurity and jealousy comes from? Because I never felt that with any other partner. I would get cheated on, I would cheat on other partners, and I wouldn't care. Yeah, it would hurt a little bit, but not as much as it would hurt me now if I learned that my partner had cheated on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's this strange difference, this nuance that kind of installed itself, and I always wonder, is that because of the constructs that I have been taught about relationships? Because my parents are married, they're a heterosexual couple, they've been married for 30 plus years. Almost all of my family members are still married to each other. So does it come from that? And yeah, these are just the questions that I ask myself. But we're going into my mind, like my anxiety-filled mind.
Yeah, but I hear Adrienne Maree Brown talk a lot about liberated love, liberated relationships. And I even think, if I'm not mistaken, she's writing a book about it, about love.
Ooh.
How we love, how we can form love and relationships. I think she's working on a book about that.
Oh my God.
So
This is
Closely
the Bible I
watching, closely
need.
listening. Yeah.
Maybe I'll have maybe there will be all of the answers that I need in there.
It's highly likely, I think. Thank you for listening so far. We will take a short break and we'll be back with you in a second. Alright, then let's move on to the next one, the last chapter of this episode. It is a brilliant conversation with Dallas Goldtooth titled The Power to Make Light. I'll read the introduction for Goldtooth directly from the book. Dallas Goldtooth is a keeper in the ground organizer at the Indigenous Environmental Network and the founder of the political comedy troupe The 1491s, and was a trustworthy spokesperson on the ground at Standing Rock, which was a radical mass action to stop a pipeline from being built on Indigenous-held lands. So, this conversation is mainly about creating light, lightness, fun and joy, while engaging in fights against darkness and oppression. And Brown questions why someone would feel compelled to join a movement that seems too serious and dire and boring, and underlines the importance of humor in drawing people in to the movement, to make it feel good, to make it fun. I love that.
I love that too. I really did. I loved this conversation, to be honest.
Me
and
too.
How Dallas made the relationship between skills such as organizing and storytelling or comedy to like, it was, I think it was very honest as well, the way that that he said it, that there's a real relationship between all of those skills and the skill of manipulation, which I found so deeply interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's literally what he starts off by saying in this conversation after to answer Adrienne Maree Brown's question. And I thought, wow, that's so fucking honest and also really, really cool to hear, because I had never really looked at it from this angle. I don't know about you, but after reading Dallas's vision of it, I can't help but agree with him.
Same. I agree as well.
Yeah.
It's like taking the hold of the narrative, manipulating it into a form for your own agenda, which can be a great agenda like stopping a pipeline from being built.
Yeah, exactly. In that case, it's a fucking valid reason to use manipulation as a way to gather people, to have people hear you, actually. So yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to what he says, and I actually really like the way he said it. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna read the quote from it.
Of course.
He said how organizing is, quote, a form of manipulation. You are using information, you're using tactics to manipulate a situation or a response from people for the benefit of a movement or the benefit of your community or for the benefit of yourself. Comedy is the same sort. Storytelling is the same process. You're using the gift of speech or an action of your body to elicit a sort of response and manipulating emotion. You're tapping into the core source code of who we are as human beings. End quote. I think there's a lot of truth to what he says, and I think there's some sort of stigma around manipulation. It's often considered as a bad word, almost an insult, a really nasty quality with evil intentions behind it. But as Dallas proves, it's not always. As humans, a lot of what we do is actually a form of manipulation. In activism, for example, we use a lot of forms of manipulations because, as Dallas says, we aim to share certain information in a specific way. We use precise words, we go through particular platforms in the hopes to reach someone deep enough to provoke a thought, an emotion, a mind change, a question. And another example that Dallas mentioned is storytelling. And being a storyteller myself, that's what I love doing. That's what I prefer doing. My goal with storytelling, apart from sharing a story, is also to prompt emotions, dreams, nightmares, questions, inspiration. And that too is a form of manipulation. But even in our daily life, at work, For example, as someone who works in the hospitality industry, me being kind to a guest, me being extra helpful is not just me being me, you know? Let's just be honest
Yes.
for 1 second. My behavior aims for the guests to feel they're having a good experience, for them to have positive memories of the establishment, and eventually for them to come back or even recommend our company to their friends and therefore drive more sales for us.
Yes.
So yeah, it is a lot. I think of our processes as human beings in our daily life, but also in more complex and intricate places and spaces. Our actions can be calculated and take the form of manipulation, but most of the time, I would hope, or I mean, in a lot of the times, it's for the greater good.
Yes, exactly. I completely agree. It's manipulation is at the core of movement, but not only in political movement, but literally movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like the entire universe that is constantly moving is constantly manipulating forms and shapes, and by extension, it's also the condition of living, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Constantly manipulating. And then by extension, for the human condition, is storytelling, forming situations and reactions and effects of certain things into a story as a means to an end.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
It's so natural. It's a very natural part of the entire universe, actually.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I think it's important to just acknowledge it and not be ashamed of it and not think, "Oh my god, you're such a manipulative evil bitch." Like, no,
Yes.
I'm just here to fight for what's right, or I'm just here to tell a story, or I'm just here to get paid.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Doesn't always have to be a bad thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then Dallas also talks about the importance of humor and lightheartedness on the strengthening of the transformative side of these stories, of this manipulation. This isn't easy to achieve because there's also a performative side to movements, a mold of behavior that people often feel compelled to recreate, like the angry protester, you know, like super pissed, which I think definitely has its uses as well. And sometimes it's so necessary to show that anger in an understandable way, in a recognizable way, you know.
I agree.
And actually, here I can again mention Audre Lorde's The Uses of Anger. It's very relevant at this point too.
Very nice. I will make note of that.
Yeah, but also Brown and Dallas talk about how people choose not to recreate that behavior are sometimes perceived as if they don't take the movement seriously enough, you know, because they don't always look so pissed or don't always shout and scream and be aggressive in their action. Whereas bringing this humor can be a survival strategy, as they mention as well. I really agree with that too. There has to be some kind of lightness that will accommodate all of that darkness.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, it can't be sustainable.
I think it should always be in balance, you know. I think there's people who are great at bringing that more raw and maybe anger, I don't want to say filled, but anger motivated energy, and there's people like Dallas who are great at balancing it out and bringing in humor and bringing in lightness in those movements. And I think both sides are extremely important to putting things in movement and bringing change forward.
Absolutely. Dallas also says that he thinks that the native communities would not have gotten to where they are if it wasn't for the power to make light of the situation, and you know how they critique the world through the lens of humor and laughter. And Dallas also proposes laughter as the counterbalance to anger, which feels true to me.
Same.
And Adrienne Marie Brown also says that she experienced some of her biggest releases from trauma in laughter.
Yeah, I loved that.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought it up because it was such a nice moment to me that when Brown pointed out how she had some of her biggest releases through laughter. Because indeed, I think, as she said, most of the time we think of trauma release related to tears and pain and maybe more of a I don't want to say sad, but, you know, an energy that brings on tears at least, and
Yes.
crying and weeping
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So I found it interesting as a reminder, and um, as a also parallel to what Dallas was saying, that laughter can also bring so much healing.
Yes.
And that's something that we really, really need to remember. I was actually curious to know and ask you if you ever had such release through laughter, and what actually would you say is your most effective means to release trauma? Is it laughter? Is it tears? A physical movement? Or is it something else completely?
Crying really helps, I must say. Crying has a lot of uses also
Mm-hmm.
to express that sadness, to really take it, put it out there. When I have a good cry, oh, it's so wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It's so priceless. But yes, I did experience the release of laughter. Even today, I do it very often about a daily thing or deeper trauma. When I find myself laughing a bit, even by myself, when I remember something that is funny,
Mm-hmm.
or even for no reason, even if I just prompt my body to laugh a little bit, to get my belly a bit hopping, I immediately feel this release.
Oh, that's
I feel like, yeah,
that's
it's not
amazing.
so serious.
Yeah.
You know, it's not so serious. All of this is a story. Yes, it is real. It doesn't make it any less real, but it's not so serious. I can just laugh about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be fine. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it gives me that sensation like, yeah, you know, like I refuse to panic. Um, it's not as easy, of course. It's easier said than done, but I'm just saying, like, laughter to me is like my body saying, I refuse to panic, I refuse to feel anxious. It can also be lighter. I can try it a different way, and let's see if that works, you know?
So nice. So wonderful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's such a nice experience and such a nice practice,
Yes,
actually, that you have going on here.
absolutely. And that's also why I think when I get together with my sister who lives in Turkey at the moment, that's why we are not able to get together as often as we used to. But whenever I'm with her, it's a full-on release of anxiety and trauma through laughter. We just don't stop laughing. She just pees her pants all the time. Sorry, Jedan, for mentioning this. But we just laugh so much. So much. And yeah, with her, I
Oh,
really experienced that because I just find my
that's
peace. I
amazing.
really, literally, I leave Jadan's side feeling further healed. That's literally how it
Oh,
feels.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
I already know she's gonna cry hearing this.
Oh, yes. And then we will cry together on the phone and then we will laugh again. What about you, Lucy? Do you have the same relationship with laughter or something else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I don't really necessarily notice when I release with laughter, but I do laugh a lot. And I know that it does bring me a lot of relief at times to laugh so much, but I never really related it to trauma release itself,
Mm-hmm.
to be completely honest. And that's not something that I necessarily experience as of yet, or at least not on a conscious level.
Yeah.
Um, However, when it comes to trauma nowadays, I do not know how my body is releasing it. I think I'm in this weird phase of transition where I'm handling my or handling, that's such a bad way of saying it. It's handling my traumas. Addressing is a better word.
Yes.
Addressing my traumas. But at the same time, I don't really have the headspace or the time to address them physically within my body.
Okay.
Um, but I think it would be great for me to go back to yoga or
Yes, I was gonna say that.
working
What
out.
about yoga?
Yeah, exactly. I used to practice yoga weekly, multiple times a week at
Mm-hmm.
home, of course, because Corona.
Yes.
But I haven't done that in honestly a good month, I would say.
Yeah.
And I also used to work out multiple times a week, and that helped tremendously for my mental health. And I can feel right now that my body is longing for movement, physical movement. So I think that might be what's missing at the moment, and why it feels stagnant a little bit in my body. All those energies and traumas that are being addressed in therapy, but not physically. You know what I mean?
Sounds very likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope
So I
you
need
can
to
get
get back
to
into it.
Yes.
Yes, I need to put more focus and discipline into that. But since starting my full-time job, I honestly didn't have the energy to do all of that.
Lucy, seriously, yeah. We have to talk about full-time jobs and 9 to 5s at one point. We have to talk about this.
Yes, we have to.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway.
And by the way, Adrienne Maree Brown talks about the Rucus Society, which is very interesting. They train organizers in nonviolent direct action. So I really encourage our listeners to check it out, and maybe some of you would be interested in a training that they might be offering at the moment. I'm not sure if they do, but definitely a very interesting organization. And yeah, I
Absolutely.
can imagine myself in the future being interested in doing something together with them.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe a training or something.
Sounds very intriguing.
Do you have any other points about this chapter?
No, actually, all of my points are long gone. Whatever that means.
That ship has sailed.
Have a nice life.
All of my points are long gone. What was the exact moment, Lucy, that they all departed you?
What is going on? Oh my God. Anyway, I don't have any more points on my list.
Okay. All right. I wanted to end it by quoting Adrienne Maree Brown, quote, "We have this whole miraculous life, and then we spend so much of it developing rigidity and developing like, okay, here's the one way to do this. I'm grateful to you for constantly throwing your rugs up against the windows and being like, the house is made of glass. It's still made of glass. It's still made of glass." End quote.
Beautiful.
Loves it.
Absolutely loves it. What a beautiful quote to end on.
Yes. Let's wrap our episode like this. So, even though this was an episode that I had much shorter notes to compare to other episodes, I still feel like we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to me.
Me too. I really like the range of conversations we had, because a lot of things came up. We went from Beyonce to Dallas Goldtooth. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yes, and in the middle there was this Zizi.
Yeah.
Slamming us on the floor, dragging us on the floor.
Dragging us dry. Oh my God.
But I had a great time, Lucy. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. I really had a great time as well. Lots of fun as usual.
Yes.
I hope our conversations will bring a lot of pleasure and a lot of entertainment to our listeners today.
Yes. I hope all our listeners had a great time listening to this episode as well. We love you, and we're looking forward to meeting you again in our 10th episode.
Yes.
All right. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you next Sunday.